Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. We are here live at Uncle Jumbo's Tasting Room on Elmwood. I am joined by my normal partner in crime, Aaron Quinn, and special guest Tim Graham. Tim, how we doing?
I'm feeling special, so thanks for having me on.
I like it.
You should feel special. I am excited. I actually called a buddy of mine. The reason I'm a Bills fan, not from the Buffalo area, a friend of mine from kindergarten, and I was asking him how the Bills season was going to go. And I said, he was like, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "I'm heading to do a live show." I was like, "You ever heard of Tim Graham?" He's like, "Dude, have I ever heard of Tim Graham? Get out of here." He's like, "I've been reading Tim Graham since I was in high school." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to talk to him." He's like, "No way." So you should feel special. The reason I'm a Bills fan said it was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds made up.
But you did pull it off really well. It sounded genuine.
I thought about it the whole way. It's a true story, I swear to God.
No, it is fun. I'm looking forward to it. Tim was on a little while ago. Since then, he actually gave us a little teaser of a piece that was coming up about a tip about John Madden. And recently, you just released a fantastic new piece this morning. Yeah. Was it just today, last night?
Yesterday morning.
Yesterday.
Yeah, Josh Allen's story. It was something that I'd been thinking about for a few weeks. It took a little while to put together. And the Matt Araiza storyline also delayed me because I had to chase that story a bit and cover that from a news standpoint. So we delayed it. We pushed it back just a few days. But yeah, I wanted to explore the notion that Josh Allen, as great as he is, might be among the greatest ever. Now, of course, he's going to have to do a lot of things to get there. Longevity is a big part of that. Championships are a big part of that. Continued success, awards, personal things, even MVPs. You don't necessarily have to win championships. Warren Moon and Dan Fouts didn't even play in Super Bowls. Yeah. But Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl. Records, all these things. But there is an equation, and I think Josh Allen is capable of hitting this equation. And hopefully for Bills fans, championships do factor into that. But I think he is just that special. I think he can do so many things, things that we haven't seen before, things that you maybe see from other quarterbacks, but not to the degree Josh Allen has. And you have also, regarding Josh Allen, things in his, again, I keep using the word equation, that are so much greater than other players. For instance, Kyler Murray can do a lot of the same types of things Josh Allen does, but he's not nearly as big.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson can do some of the things that Josh Allen can do, but he's not nearly as, shall we say, on the field.
Yeah.
There are things, Patrick Mahomes, as daring as he is, again, size issue. Justin Herbert, okay, so he does match the size of Josh Allen, but doesn't apply what he has like Josh Allen does,
or the personality.
Yeah, there's the quarterback lifestyle that Kurt Warner talked about in my story. Like, this guy does it all. He takes it seriously. It's more than just a profession for him. It's a lifestyle, and there are a lot of really talented quarterbacks out there that I think, and we've seen it over the course of time, not just now, but over the course of time. Super talented quarterbacks who just didn't take it as seriously as a guy like Josh Allen does, or a Peyton Manning does, or a Tom Brady, in terms of the film and the study and the things that you need to do off the field, even in the community, not even football stuff, but just the mentality of, I'm a leader. I am here to be viewed. I want you to follow me. I want to be your leader, not just I'm a leader de facto because I play the most important position on the field. It is, let's go, boys. Jump on my back. Let's get after it. Yeah, and Josh Allen does all that.
And one thing that we didn't even really get into in that is, I talked to Greg a lot about that, like the Kobe Bryants of the world, the Tiger Woods of the world, that are so obsessed with perfecting their craft, sort of like you're saying, like putting in all that extra stuff, but it's a step above where they'll go through anything, pain, whatever it is, to get that extra advantage within the game itself, and they will tear their Achilles and continue to play whatever it is. And he's got that. And you've been around actual NFL players and a lot of locker rooms and stuff like that. Have you, here in Buffalo, have you seen a guy that has that sort of ick factor with some of the all-time greats in sports?
Well, we're going back to hockey. I covered Dominic Hasek. I covered Chris Drury. I covered Daniel Briere, Ryan Miller. I mean, there are certain guys who are wired that way, but it's been a long time in football Kyle Williams is wired that way, but he's also a guy who, because he was wired that way, got the most that he could out of
who he was,
not elite skills.
That
There's a
fifth-round
reason he was
pick.
right.
Yeah.
He was small, but he was Mr. Energy every play. I mean, he never took a play off. I mean,
Only so much influence a defensive tackle can have.
That's
on the
right.
team.
But I'll say this, and I'll admit this, and I said this, in fact, during my conversation I had with Bill Parcells for this story about it, and he knew where I was coming from. He didn't really have a comment on it, but when Josh Allen entered the NFL, I thought that he was a little too polished in terms of he was saying all the right things, saying all of the things that you do because you had an advisor who taught you how to get through the combine.
Aw shucks.
Yeah, and I thought he was a phony. That was my initial impression. I just thought, this isn't genuine. It's not coming from the heart. He's saying it because he thinks he's supposed to say it. And I don't know if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But there was a point where I remember thinking to myself, this is not an act. And I was wrong. And this guy really is, and maybe he's just finally bought into it himself. Maybe it wasn't at the beginning, and he was like, if he got drafted by Pittsburgh, he'd be saying the same things about the steel mills that he does. But whatever. Maybe that was part of him. But there was a point where I thought to myself, this guy is becoming a leader. I shouldn't even say that. This guy's becoming the leader. Mm-hmm. And it was reminiscent of what I would see with any other team. I covered the AFC East for ESPN. And so I guess covered Tom Brady, and I covered, when Mark Sanchez was a big thing, when they were winning, going to back-to-back AFC championship games in his first year and winning on the road in the playoffs and all these types of things. Chad Pennington, these guys who were, but there was just something that clicked with me, and I'm like, this guy's not a phony. And so that's where I think I think that's a healthy cynicism. The fact that I didn't buy into it right away, I don't think is any great sin. There were a lot of people who didn't. I always bought into him from a physical standpoint. I was never one to say, oh, this guy can never make it in the NFL because of his inaccurate arm, or the fact that people totally missed on the running aspect of it. I thought he could be a really good quarterback in the NFL. But there's another echelon to great quarterbacking, generalship. And I wasn't sold right away. Yeah. And hero ball really also infiltrated my mind. Is he ever going to get this out of his system? And once he did, I think there was something about it where, for me, it was like, no, this guy's it. And I think it really eventually got me to the place where I wrote the story that I did, or at least wanted to explore that idea. Like, is this guy it? Like, could this guy be it? Like, not just for the Bills, but of all time. And, of course, we're not talking – he's going to have to win 9 championships to be better than Tom Brady. Sure. But you can have a debate as who's the greatest quarterback of all time, or the second greatest quarterback of all time is, I guess. And I think he could be in it.
Yeah. It's just – I've made the comparison before that, he's what a guy like Jamarcus Russell or Jeff George could have been. And if you use Kyle Williams, imagine if you had a Kyle Williams mentality born in the Jamarcus Russell body. Right. You have that size, unbelievable cannon, athleticism, or Steve McNair was a guy that I would bring up sometimes. And, that was the thing that before the draft and after the draft, similar to how fans have latched on to the Kaiir Elam notebook video and the note-taking and the studiousness, because we didn't know that beforehand. I bought in very quickly to Josh Allen after the draft once you heard the interest level in being coached and again, we didn't know how authentic the humility was, but what sounded like humility in the approach to things. You don't often hear that in a uber talented athlete. So getting to that point and then seeing it after the first year to be, he's going with Jordan Palmer to rip his mechanics down to the studs and redo it. You don't hear that all that often. And then to do it even after the fantastic third season where he came out of nowhere and was runner-up to the MVP, to again go back and keep working on things. That's where it really won me over that, oh my gosh, we might really have something special here if he's going to take that unbelievable bundle of physical tools, that crazy competitiveness you see on the field. We were talking before the show with some other folks that are here. Darius Butler is a former NFL DB, and they had players on his show, and they were talking about who are the best trash talkers in the NFL. And there were some of the guys you would normally think of that you hear running their mouth a lot. And then they said, hey, you want to know a really sneaky one? Josh Allen. Josh Allen is one that doesn't give you any of the stuff at the podium, but on the field, he's going to run you over, and then he's going to come tell you how he just ran you over. And he's like, and I respect that from a guy like that. So that it's fun to hear that that's the package.
I think what I'm distilling it more as we're talking about it. Broad strokes, I was speaking there about how I thought he was a bit of a phony. And again, that was me. That was my perception of 20 years of bad NFL quarterbacking. You're just not used to this, right? We've kind of seen it before. People who say the right things, or people who were talented but didn't say the right things. Like Trent Edwards never said the right things. Rob Johnson never said the right things. J.P. Lossman, I think, came close sometimes, but didn't have the performances to go along with it. But I'm remembering, I'll just use as an example, very early in his career, it might have been his rookie season, he goes out of his way during a news conference to mention, Buffalo's the only New York team, and people were like, ate that up, were like, oh my God, we love Josh Allen. But that was also like he's pandering.
It's very corny.
Like he's clearly pandering, talking about blue cheese, never ranch, all this stuff. He's checking all the boxes.
Everyone
things. Yeah. But there was a point a couple of years ago when, I think that when he started he has never been offended by a question. Well, I take that back. I think he can get he was offended by questions early in his career when it had to do with Wyoming or inaccuracy or things where he was like, look, I'm not that guy. Like he wouldn't say that, but you could tell in his body language he didn't like those questions about the doubts and the knocks and all the different demerits that he was getting. But over the last couple of years, he does not bristle at questions. In fact, when it comes to a question that is critical, he owns it. And it's not as though he's like pandering in the way he owns it. He will say, he won't push back and say, no, you're wrong, or I don't understand why you'd say that. He almost always says, you're right, and I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's saying it, again, as a pandering thing. I think he's saying it because that's what leaders do. And so you're constantly in the media trying to read the tea leaves or read between the lines. And I just find him to be a really admirable and I think not unique, rare leader. I think he is wired that way. There are people who are just wired that way. I mentioned Daniel Briere and Chris Drury. Those guys are just wired differently. Lindy Ruff, wired differently. I'll tell you a good Lindy Ruff story. We're here at a bar, so this is a good one. This was during the NHL lockout, and I was doing a story about how Lindy Ruff was passing the time in a beer league hockey. He was in the hockey beer league playing with bros and joes. And they would go to the bar after the game. And so we're at oh shoot, I'm having trouble thinking of anyway, there's a place in Amherst where we went, and I'm writing the story. So we go there, and I'm having beers, and I'm just talking to Lindy for the story. And I have a tendency to pound my beers, and that's just the way I drink. It's just the way I drink.
Tough problem to have.
And it is. It certainly is. And at some point, Lindy notices that I'm going pretty fast with this pint that I'm drinking, this draft. And I can tell that we're in a race.
Yeah.
And what he does is he waits for me to start talking.
Yeah.
And he pounds finishes it, slams it on the table, and says, I got to get out of here, guys. See you later. And I had like maybe this much left.
Yeah.
And he was like, I won.
Josh Allen would do that to you if you sat down with him.
That
little
that's
kind of noticeable thing.
I'm like, man, that guy's just freaking wired. Like, he had to beat me at drinking this beer.
Yeah.
Like there's no score.
It's got to be insufferable to
There's
be
no
around
score
all the time, to be around somebody like that.
But guys are like that, and I think there are a lot of people in sports like that. Conversely, and this is something that I bring up a lot when I'm talking to other athletes and coaches who understand that this is an unfortunate part of sports. The NFL, not the NFL, sports are loaded with people who don't even care about playing the game. They're because they have the raw talent. And when you have the combination of the wiring and the ability is when you come up with something special like Josh Allen, as opposed to somebody who is immensely talented and just not wired to give a damn because they don't love it. They are doing it because they fell into it. They happen to hit the DNA lottery, and they've had coaches tell them and parents who want to get the free education. The money is easy, but that doesn't mean I'm going to put in the extra work.
Yeah. One of my favorite anecdotes from the story was one that you hinted at before, and it's one that you had brought up, Aaron, about the fact that you came across messages confirming from John Madden that he was, what was the term that he used?
He's an animal. He's a beast. He's worth the price of admission. Sam Farmer from the LA Times said that John Madden was fixated by Josh Allen.
I did. You were talking about that, Aaron. About he's the exact kind of guy you would expect that.
Oh yeah, like I could just picture Madden on a like Thanksgiving game.
Remember how disgusted we used to be with how John Madden would say about Brett Favre?
Yes,
like,
exactly. Just gushing over him.
That would be John Madden. It would be John Madden with Josh Allen right now.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, because you're telling the story about, Buffalo athletes and stuff like that. And we're talking about whether or not Josh can be an all-time great, which I agree with you. I think it's all laid out in front of him to do it. It's a matter of if he can have some of that longevity in order to get up in that conversation. But regardless, he's a Buffalo all-time great already at this point, right? The story of the pairing between the quarterback that had to email his way into colleges, to fight and claw his way to prove himself to people, with a city that has a chip on its shoulder, constantly trying to prove itself. Is there a better match between the underdog story of Josh Allen and the underdog story of Buffalo?
And you know what, mate? You mentioned that now, and it was a missed opportunity on my part. I interviewed Kurt Warner for the story, and Kurt Warner is that guy, right? But a totally different player. So imagine how amazing the Kurt Warner story is. That Josh Allen wasn't bagging groceries in his mid-20s.
Pachuco's that's a real thing.
But if Kurt Warner had the skills,
the bazooka for an arm.
He was like 6'5".
If he had the bazooka and could run over a linebacker and all that stuff, leap over a safety, all these things. Yeah, I think that's what you have. And I also want to point out that if you're watching here, the lighting has changed. We're now being lit solely by the Sunoco gas.
$4.09 a gallon.
Yeah, $4.09 a gallon. $4.69 for premium.
Yeah.
But Hodge Liquor had us lit up a little bit better. Hodge Liquor has since closed the red light, so we're a little
dimmer. That's the wrap it up sign for us, probably.
Right. When Hodge Liquor closes. But yeah, I think it is perfect, and you want it to work out. And of course, I'm not a Buffalonian, but I do. There's so many people I care about who are, and I want them to be happy. And I would love for the Bills to do this, and I think that. That's the heart. It's where the heartbreak is kind of embedded. Is that they are the Super Bowl favorites. I do believe that they're the best team in the entire NFL. However, that gives them probably something like a 10% likelihood of winning the Super Bowl.
12% chance.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
Yeah,
depending on. I think ESPN has its analytics has them at they're the Super Bowl favorites, but 8%.
Yeah, it's
or whatever it is. So the betting probability is I think 12.
Yeah.
So it's that's where you're
it's hard business to be.
Here comes the heartbreak.
Well, but we bring it up last year. Does anyone feel like the Bengals were the best team in the AFC last year? Like, once you get to that point, you need some things to fall your way.
Right.
You can make a very solid argument that Buccaneers team or that Packers team might have been better than the Rams if they had to play 10 times. Heck, you go back to last year, if you told me each of those teams had to play the Bills 10 times, every team in the playoffs, I think the Bills win 6+ games with all of them. I think they would have won, the majority. The Chiefs would have been the closest one, but I think the Bills might have beat the Chiefs 6 out of 10. It's just they didn't when it mattered. And that's when you're in that one and done tournament.
That's right.
That's how Dan Marino doesn't have a trophy. That's how Warren Moon, Dan Fouts doesn't have a trophy.
I got to ask, because it's been the thing that you're seeing on Twitter of people with the expectations of the season. Really, since February, it's been all Bills for the Super Bowl. and a lot of people have started the narrative of Super Bowl or bust for the Bills. I don't live in that world because of what you just said. The margins are real slim, and to Greg's point, all it takes is one team getting hot at the right time or one injury to go the wrong way. Is this Super Bowl or bust, or is the window open here?
I think the window's open for a few years, but I don't believe in or bust anything. Especially if, going back to when I first started covering the Bills, and it is, hey, does Dick Duran get fired if they're 8-8?
Yeah.
And to me, it all comes down to, you can't say that. It's how you get to 8-8. If you start off like Dick Duran did the one year at 5-3, and then end up at 8-8 or whatever it was, 5-2 maybe it was. It matters how it happens. And so if the Bills don't win the Super Bowl, there could be all kinds of legitimate reasons why they don't, where you can rationalize it wasn't our year. If Josh Allen suffers an unfortunate injury, you can't look at it and say, well, it's time to hit the reset button or anything like that. So I think it's dangerous. And I do know there are a lot of fans. There's a segment of fans out there who it's like, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, that's it. Josh Allen, and especially with the way quarterbacks are protected.
Yes.
With contracts looking better and better every passing month.
He's going to be like the 10th highest paid quarterback by this time next year.
But with the way things happen with injuries, and that's not to say that you can't get a 15-yard penalty is no consolation for losing a guy for a year. However, players don't do the things that they used to do to quarterbacks.
Yes.
Head shots, slides. They can slide head first now. The things that, he's protected. The Bills are going to invest more money in their offensive line. They're going to have to because they have to protect their investment. The defense is going to get worse. That's just what happens when you have a good quarterback. Think of the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees. Yeah. Think about the New England Patriots after they realized Tom Brady was pretty good. They went from a defense-first team to let's get after it. That happens. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, they went from the Legion of Boom to, we can't afford the Legion of Boom because we got so the Bills are going to shift even more to offensive side. But Josh Allen should be in his prime for another 10 years.
Yeah, that's not crazy.
If you have your quarterback, then hell, then anything's possible.
Yeah, this window is wide open, and don't get me wrong, there can be disappointment. There can be frustration. There can be a letdown at the end. But like I tell people all the time, I know I'm going to get to watch 17 incredibly entertaining games, very likely multiple playoff games, maybe 3 or 4, and that if it doesn't end the right way, yes, that would be a shame. It would be discouraging. It would be disappointing. Super Bowl or bust. The or bust is like, or else what? Like, right. You're going to stop.
I not enjoy the
team? Bean is out.
You're going to
Dermot is out.
Yeah. Or else what?
And you don't get to enjoy those previous 17 to 19 fun games you had.
We're going to trade. We're going to trade Dawson Knox for draft picks.
You'll hear it all.
And so
people will panic. That's what fans do.
Of course. And for your sake, how fun would it be to get to cover a Super Bowl parade or something like that?
I've never done it.
No,
I've never done it. Even though I technically covered the Patriots, although the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl during my 3 years covering the AFC East. In fact, did they go to a Super Bowl? My first year was Brady's injury, Matt Castle. They didn't make the playoffs. 2 years? No, I don't think I could. No, I didn't technically cover, and that would have been a weak Super Bowl cover for me. I covered an entire division. Yeah. That wouldn't have counted for me. I've never been a beat writer on a team that's won a championship. Sabres came the closest.
So, on a less exciting note, I do want to, really credit you. I thought you were incredible during the Matt Araiza situation and everything that was happening. Obviously, things were coming fast and furious, the team being in a position, we spoke on it, that, it's one of those things where if everything that's been alleged is true, the people involved should be in prison. But you're in a spot where people are having to make decisions not knowing. And when one party in the event is vehemently telling you it wasn't the case, tell us what you can about your experience going through what was a very fast evolving story that had, honestly, national attention for a window of time.
Honestly, with the exception of the subject matter, I'm able. Well, All right. So when it comes to news stories, I'm able to put my brain on autopilot. They are easier for me to write than features. Even though feature like the Josh Allen story, you would think it would be easier to write because you're talking about much later. But to me, you have to work on your words more as a feature writer. In the news, it's just like I got to hurry up, I got to turn this out, I got to get it posted. Just the facts type stuff. Thankfully, given the subject matter, because of that, I'm able to put my mind on that autopilot and not think about really what the subject matter is. It's just what are the facts here. After you file the story, you can decompress and think, holy smokes, I mean, this is just bad all the way around. And can I swear on here?
Yeah.
I mean, how much can I swear?
Whatever.
All right, so in covering it, I don't want to get into a journalism 101 discussion because that's kind of boring. But as it happened, those 48 hours where the LA Times story broke and the Bills cut Matt Araiza, it seemed like an eternity.
Yes.
Because people wanted him gone. They wanted him gone yesterday.
Everyone's doom scrolling.
Absolutely. How did they not know? All this other stuff. And so I'm constantly trying to answer the questions as best I can. After the fact, and I have a chance to talk to people who are now more willing to speak about it because it's over with. I think really what it came down to was this. And it was a difficult decision for the Buffalo Bills, but I think what it came down to, at the very least, and it was the way it was expressed to me by one of my sources, what you saw in the civil suit that the Bills, I don't think, were fully aware of, especially when you read it on the printed page and you see direct quotes attributed to Araiza with the police monitoring a phone call. That's something that you're not going to invent. That an attorney isn't just going to invent in a civil suit for risk of losing their license or for committing perjury.
Regulations that stop that.
Is the way it was explained to me is, at the very least, this guy is an asshole.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking as somebody from the Buffalo Bills, saying we don't have assholes.
Yeah.
And so it's like he doesn't mix with us. Regardless whatever happened, whether it was legal, illegal. In the state of New York, he'd been arrested a long time ago because in the state of New York, it's clear cut. If you're 17, it doesn't matter if she gives you a fake ID that says she's 25 or she's in the bar. She's been sitting in the bar, and you think, well, she's got to be 21. They've been serving her all night. No, it's up to you to know that she's over 18.
Yeah.
In the state of California, it's not. You have to prove you did not know she was at least 18. So there's a gray area.
That's murky. Yeah.
So they couldn't be in a situation where they have a fan base or even a segment of their fan base that says, we have a guy who committed statutory rape on our roster. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm saying allegedly, but that's what the fans would be saying. Sure. They really had no choice.
That was really where my approach came from, was how can you move forward in a position where it's possible you're putting beyond just a consensual, unaware statutory situation, the possibility that you're putting a violent rapist in uniform when you know it's possible that those allegations have been made, even if he's vehemently telling you that's not the case. Just the fact that that's possible, it put them in the decision where they made what I felt was the only possible decision. And that, you talk about how long that 48 hours was, that window Friday morning.
They also had a lot going on too.
Yes, where they had already left. They were already in the plane. You can't make changes on a game day. He's with the team, because of course he'd be with the team. He was literally already on the plane.
I mean, theoretically, they could have just left him in Charlotte. But there is that machination of it. Like, he's here with us. Do we take him in his hotel room?
You have 80 other guys that are competing for their livelihood.
Yes.
Like, that's a real thing too. That they have a responsibility to allow those guys to compete, and you got to stay focused on that in that moment too.
How about if you even have 80 other guys who are looking at you saying, "Well, what if some girl comes with an allegation at me? Sure. Are you just going to cut me first and ask questions later?" Like, that's 100%.
That's really one of the unspoken things about this. That, again, it doesn't get said because it really comes off as crass.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Brandon Beane says it, however,
they get allocations all the time.
Teams get this all the time.
All the time.
And again, you can't. Again, that sounds like, well, then where's the responsibility to vet each one of them? That's what you.
The league does need to do that too.
That's where, and I mentioned it on my podcast. The idea, does the NFL need to come up with a clearinghouse of like, even if it's like
they need to hire a
attorneys
bunch of
fresh
old
out of
investigators
or attorneys fresh out of law school, and all their job is like you call this hotline if you or whatever the attorney instead of calling the Bills because you're only as weak as your one of your 32 teams' worst attorneys, like in terms of a major embarrassment. And that's not to say that the Bills didn't handle it properly, but if you don't handle every one, but you're used to it. You're just in this realm of constantly hearing. Remember Vince Young a few years ago? Remember he got served with papers at training camp? You know, it's like
I was trying to explain to some fans that, like, I think one of the things that happens is those attorneys become, so they get these notices from people all the time that something's going to happen, and they say, okay, there's another one, and that's an unfortunate thing. The NFL needs to take it more seriously for sure. I got one for you because culture was scoffed at a lot when Sean McDermott came in. I think a lot of people felt the same way about him that you felt about Josh Allen. That this is all phony, culture doesn't matter, yada yada.
I never believed that.
No, not you, but people believed it.
I think he's a legitimate hardo.
Yes.
He's a genuine, dyed-in-the-wool, 100% card-carrying hardo.
Yes. Absolutely. He's not like how they give stories about Belichick that he's actually funny in that the hard ass is the show in the press conferences. No, I don't believe Sean McDermott's
Hardo, all caps, not just capital H.
He's never had a good time in his entire life. He's never had fun ever.
But I recall. Okay, so this is it.
We're going off the rails.
We are a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna because it really stands out to me as really it left an imprint on me as to Sean McDermott. His first year with the Bills. Yeah, I remember. I'm pretty sure it was a Thursday because of the type of gatherings they have on the different days, and it was kind of like a casual little scrum in the field house. And I think the previous night was Halloween. And I said, hey, Sean, I'm just making small talk. I'm like, hey, Sean, what'd your kids go for as Halloween last night? And he didn't know. And I'm like, okay, like that, because he's a football he's coaching his football team.
It's the same DNA as Josh Allen.
I don't know that that's an indictment.
No,
but it's just kind of like
you got to be wired that way.
And I caught him, and he was like, I could tell by the look on his face, he was like, oh shit.
I'm probably supposed to know
there's other
that.
reporters around, it's not like it's just him and me. He was just kind of like, like that's it. Like he's coaching. He's got a game. Yeah. He's got a game in a couple of days.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I think we should wrap it up on a good Sean McDermott story, right?
Yeah. No, honestly, that's about as good as we're going to get. But, so we talked about it tonight, some of the different pieces that are out there. Make sure you're checking out Tim's work on The Athletic. He mentioned his podcast,
Awesome.
Tim Grandin Friends. Make sure you're checking that out. I am glad that you have Matthew Fairburn back. He is a nice addition to the show more often. It's great to have him back in town. Any final thoughts? I know last time you gave us a really fun teaser. Anything else on another upcoming piece?
No, because I'm actually stalled out at the minute. I need to come up with something for next week here in the next couple of days to run before the game. So if anybody's got some ideas that they want to shoot me as to what you want me to write about heading into this Rams game, send them to me.
I like it.
At by Tim Graham, DM me. My DMs are open on Twitter. Shoot me an email at tgraham@theathletic.com or whatever you want. But yeah, I'm actually looking. I'm fishing a little bit.
I like it.
Yeah, your accessibility, I said it before the show, is my favorite trait of yours. That honestly, I've talked to countless bloggers, podcasters that have come to you throughout the years for advice, and your DMs are really open. You've always been responsive, and it's not always the case. So I applaud you for always being an open book like that, man.
In a similar vein, your lack of willingness to suffer fools on Twitter is also one of my favorite things. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, I've had to tone it down a little bit now that The Athletic is owned by the New York Times, but we'll see.
You still air them out perfectly well.
I do like paying my mortgage, so
I get it.
I've changed a little.
So overall, thank you guys very, very much. Thank you to Eric and some of the guys that came out here tonight to be able to spend some time with us. Thank you to Uncle Jumbo's. Make sure you're coming out here to check them out. Uncle Jumbo's Tasting Room.
How about
on
shout
Elwood.
out to Nate Geary? He was here
He was
earlier.
Yeah, Nate
pulled up
Geary
his
stopping
fancy
by.
feet.
Yeah, I think he was pumping Celine Dion when he came by. So just a
makes sense.
great night. Really appreciate it. Thank you again to Tim Graham. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.